All right, thanks for joining us today on the premiere episode of Folkin Around the World. I am Shaughnessy McDaniel, of course, and on today's episode, we're talking to English singer, songwriter, and just overall awesome folk musician, Katherine Priddy. So we're going to talk to her about what she's been working on, talk to her about her music, and talk to her about building community during this crisis. Why don't you start off by just introducing yourself a little bit, introducing your music, kind of what does it sound like? What are some of your inspirations, some of those sorts of things?
Yeah, I'm Katherine Priddy. I am from a lovely rural part of the West Midlands in England, and I write my own folk music, but it's heavily inspired by traditional Irish and English folk. So I grew up listening to Irish musicians like Andy Irvine and Christy Moore, Planxty, people like that. But then I've also listened to a lot of Nick Drake and John Renbourn and John Martin and other guitarists, as well as people like Joni Mitchell and Joan Baez. So I try and write songs which have that kind of storytelling nature of old folk songs, but sound a bit more contemporary. Basically.
So what kind of drew you to folk music initially? Like it's not the world's most popular genre at the moment,
no.
But we love it.
We do love it. I think I liked, when I was younger, I liked the stories, because folk songs I think do all have that in common, that they tend to really, because it was the oral tradition, it was how stories were spread originally, and I love that they always have something to say, folk music. And I think often you also get quite political like protest songs and stuff, which was quite attractive when I was younger. But I also think it's just a fantastic community. I'm glad I chose folk music because it's a fairly small genre, which means people know each other, people are willing to support each other. It hasn't got that same competitive edge that maybe like the pop music scene might have. So yeah, it's a really fun scene to be part of.
Yeah, you can't be a very pompous folk musician, like unless you're Paul Simon or something. Like it's not like yeah, it's not like any of us live in giant mansions and are rolling it. We don't jump into a Scrooge McDuck pool of money. It just doesn't really happen. So
I'm still working out how folk music's ever going to pay the bills, but we'll.
Yeah, good luck. I've been working on that formula for 10 years, and I'm only getting farther away from the answer.
I think you do folk music for the love of it, don't you, rather than for anything else?
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's a mix of like, it's culture. There's the portability, right, of playing acoustic music. You can go and play it wherever. Sound guys love us because we're so easy to set up.
Yeah. It can also be a good gateway genre, I think, for kind of, because you can make it sound more subversive and contemporary if you want to, whilst keeping that like traditional feel at the base of it all, which is quite fun.
Well, it's the advantage of kind of that storytelling aspect of folk music, right? Is that you can still tell any kind of story you want in the folk style. Did you ever dabble in any other genres? Was there ever a time when you were like, I really just want to play death metal or something like that?
I love rock music, and a guilty pleasure of mine is people like Motley Crue. I'm huge into my like sleaze rock and stuff like that. And whilst I'm not saying that I think I'm going to be able to somehow marry those two and create sleaze folk, I've often tried to make sure I love traditional folk music, but I don't necessarily want to play pure traditional folk. I like to try and bring in like maybe electronic atmospheres into some of my music when I record it, and when I perform, sometimes use electric guitars and stuff behind me and things to try and make it a little bit less traditional while still keeping that sound at the root of it all.
Yeah, and that's always one of the challenges, right? Is that like there's a lot of people that have played those, you know, those traditional songs. They've been around for hundreds of years, so like naturally there's a lot of recordings of them, and so you got to kind of like do your own spin.
Yeah, trying to make them sound contemporary, I suppose. It's the tricky thing.
So we talked about some of your kind of folk inspirations and like singer-songwriter inspirations. Do you have any other like big inspirations from genres outside of folk music, aside from Motley Crue?
Yeah, aside from Motley Crue. I see you've seen that music video of me spinning around on a drum kit then for, for Tommy Lee. No, I think when I've been recording, artists like Radiohead, I don't know how familiar you are with Radiohead, but
I know Radiohead.
Yeah, so I like the way that they build up layers of sound in some of their songs. There's a couple of my songs that I've recorded and haven't released that I've taken quite heavy inspiration from some of Radiohead's recordings. So yeah, stuff like that. I don't know. And also there's kind of more soundscapey electronic music. And whilst I don't want to create electronic music, I like that use of atmospheres. There's a great English band called Tongue who use electronic looping and kind of they take samples of stuff, but they make music which still sounds very folky, but has all these interesting textures and stuff which I really like.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I've never. Granted, I don't dabble in electronic music very much.
Well, me neither, really. Me neither. But I think you can use it to create very organic sounding sounds sometimes.
We always have a rule in my band that's just like you have to play an instrument into the microphone for it to go on the album.
I agree,
or it has to come out of your mouth.
I agree, but the thing is, you can take organic instruments and record them through certain with certain recording techniques to change the sound and manipulate it into something a lot weirder. So it can still be organic, but then you can use electronic methods to kind of make it more interesting.
Very cool. Very cool. So you talked about this a little bit already, but like your music combines a lot of different like folk traditions and styles. Could you talk about like some of the different like sounds and ideas that you take from different cultures of folk music?
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, the songs I sing are original. They're not. I do some traditional covers sometimes, but even the ones that I've written myself have definitely got quite an English folk style to them sometimes, whereas others maybe sound a bit more Irish, because I listened to a lot of both when I was younger. But then recently I've been listening to a lot more Americana music, and some more like country and stuff like that, and trying to bring in elements of the American folk tradition into some of my songs as well, particularly in like the guitar style. I love people like Jackson C. Frank, another American guitarist. So I'd like to kind of learn a bit more of that style as well, I think, at some point.
Yeah, I was listening to your EP yesterday, and parts of it really reminded me of there's a band from here in Colorado called Elephant Revival that has like if there's always this Celtic twinge to what you're doing in your vocals, and if you took that out, the vocals would sound very similar. But don't worry, you're still very unique.
That's it. I think one of the beauties of folk music is that these songs, whilst sometimes it's very hard to pin down where they're actually from originally, because they get taken around and changed, and kind of all of these traditions. You can find 10 versions of a song which all seem to tell the same story, but come from different parts of the world and different parts of England and Ireland and Scotland as well. So I think I like the fact that folk can't always be pinned down to one particular location as well.
Yeah, even like me and my dad were listening to I lost it, but there's a Scottish version of it and there's an American version of it, and even like the song itself, like at the core is the same, but both the lyrics and like certain aspects of the music changed in the transatlantic journey.
Have you ever listened to the transatlantic sessions?
No, I haven't.
They've been going for years, but they do live ones. There's lots of videos. I went to see them earlier this year, luckily before the wheels came off. And they get lots of like amazing American musicians, and then lots of amazing English, Irish, Scottish musicians, and they put on a big show where they blend the two, the multiple sounds all together, and it's stunning. I recommend checking out the transatlantic sessions.
Yeah, that sounds great, because you think about like I mean, you know, one of the big folk instruments. I mean, Mumford and Sons plays it. The Dubliners played it. The banjo, and
Hmm.
that's not a British instrument. I mean,
No,
though
exactly.
to be fair, I guess neither is the guitar, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think makes for like great folk music? What do you think is like the core of good folk music?
I don't know. Sorry, there's a fly. I don't know. It's such a broad. It's such a broad genre for me. Um, I think, like I said, I think at the root of it all, I like the fact that folk music often has something to say rather than just being your kind of average, like chart love song. I feel like folk music often has a bit more substance to it lyrically and stuff like that. But I don't know if I could pin down kind of what makes folk great. Um, I like the fact. I don't know. I guess it has always got a fairly organic sound to it. I think it is. I think it is the storytelling for me that I really like in folk music. Trying to think what else would make it great, because you couldn't. There's a lot you can't compare. Some of the musicianship, obviously, and some of the more traditional music, which is maybe just instrumental, is incredible. But then you also get some incredible, like stripped back folk songs, which are equally powerful. So, but I think for me, it's that folk often has a little bit more substance and a little bit more something to say, which I
Yeah, I
like.
mean that, and you know, yeah, you don't hear a lot of storytelling on Radio One, right?
No, 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 possibly not. No.
So, um, we already covered that one. Moving on. Um, in terms of like the themes and lyrics of your music, what do you think are some of the kind of overarching ideas, or what ideas like intrigue you the most that you kind of wrestle with when you're writing some of these songs?
Um, I studied literature at university, English literature, and certainly a few of my songs I've taken inspiration from characters from books I've read, like Wolf, which is the title track for my first EP. I wrote that after reading Wuthering Heights for the first time, and based it on the character of Heathcliff. So I think a lot of my songs lyrically take inspiration from books I've read. Um, but I always try and make my lyrics read. I love writing the lyrics the most. For me, I think they're important, and for me, I always try and make it so that if you took the music away, it would still read nicely as like a poem or a story. And I also take a lot of inspiration from Greek mythology. I've got a couple of songs based on Greek myths as well. I don't know. I just think they're really passionate stories, and they've often got interesting kind of moral lessons behind them as well. And you can easily take those stories and bring them into the modern day, and they still hold a lot of relevance, I think, in modern society.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, because at my day job, that's what I teach is ancient medieval history.
Oh, wow, okay.
So like that's definitely always one of the things. Like when you hit Greek mythology, like it's so easy to get those kids like locked into
It's
what you're doing,
exciting. It's passionate. Yeah, I love all of that sort of stuff.
especially because they're middle schoolers and they love drama. They're
Yeah,
12, 13 years old.
the group are pretty sexy as well. I think a lot of the stories are probably quite exciting for middle schoolers.
um, so you've done so the releases that people can go find now. You've got the two EPs. You've got Wolf and you've got Letters from a Traveling Man.
Yeah.
Are you? I know there's always a lot of debate amongst musicians about like the do you do like the smaller EP releases, or do you go like for a big full album?
Hmm.
And you know, considering like today's you know the way people get their music now, which is mostly through the streaming services, through Spotify, Pandora, Google Play. Um, so are you kind of planning on continuing with the EP release schedule? You've been able to kind of do that consistently. You did one in 2018, one in 2019, or are you dabbling in the idea of doing kind of a bigger full length album?
Well, the EP originally, the 4 track one, Wolf. I released that. That was my first release because I think I think there's positives and negatives for going either way, for going straight in for an album or a small EP. But I wanted to release something small just to try and kind of get it out there and build a bit of an audience, and get a few plays on radio and get a few people listening and a few people interested. So that when I release a big album, it's got people there, the audience are there to listen. Whereas I think sometimes your first release, if it's the big album, you may not have been able to kind of create the momentum necessary to give it its like best chance of kind of being heard, I suppose. And then the vinyl, the Letters from a Travelling Man, which I released as a limited edition vinyl, that was again a single. And if I'm totally honest, all of this was building up towards a big like album release. But unfortunately, coronavirus has kind of scuppered those plans slightly. So yeah, I definitely want to get a full album out there. And there may or may not have been an album supposed to being released around this time, but we'll have to kind of readjust and rethink about how that's going to happen now, I think.
Well, it kind of transitions well into kind of my next few questions. So for one, you already kind of answered this. What are some other ways that the last couple of months of all of this craziness has like impacted you and your budding musical career?
Yeah, it's been a bit rubbish because it has been a bit rubbish. That's putting it mildly. I think the last 2 years with the 2 releases, everything was kind of building up towards this year. I wanted to release an album, and everything was in place. Like it all felt like it was all coming together, and 2020 was going to be the year. And I don't know if you know Glastonbury Festival. It's like the biggest UK festival. Yeah, and I had that was lined up. I had loads of festivals lined up and a couple of tours, and it was kind of all supposed to be happening. But of course now everything's cancelled pretty much. I think I've got a couple of festivals still booked in for September, but I don't know if everything will be back to normal by then. I think
they just haven't canceled things that far out yet, right?
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I mean, it's awful what's going to happen to all these small venues and festivals, but yeah, coronavirus has had a massive impact. It's basically cleared my diary for this year. Everything's on hold now.
What do you think things might look like in the next 6 to 12 months for, especially like the live music scene in Britain, because you know it better than I do. I did play a few shows there when I was at university at St. Andrews, but
bro. It's very hard to say. I think I don't know what it's like over in your neck of the woods, but certainly in the UK, our music scene is dominated by small independent venues that play a really key role in kind of supporting new bands, like giving up and coming artists like me places to tour, and a lot of it is done out of love rather than money, particularly in the folk scene. I mean, it's not a great money spinner for anyone. I mean, even the big artists tend to play in these fairly small venues, and I honestly don't know how many of them are going to survive because they're all closed at the moment. I imagine that their profit margins are probably relatively small at the best of times. It's always hard to sell tickets. It's always an unstable climate for tickets and things. So I'm really worried that coming out of this in 6 months, we may come out of lockdown, but I'm not sure. There's no guaranteeing that there'll be any places to play. And I mean, the places that will play will be so full of loads of artists who've got their tours planned that I think it's going to take a long time for things to get back to normal. So
yeah, I agree. We've had three venues down in Denver closed just in the last week. Mm-hmm. Granted, this is kind of the point where everybody was trying to scrape by, and now everything's kind of starting to take its toll. But yeah, it's really concerning, especially for those small venues where, like you said, where like this is the place where like if you've got some music that nobody's heard before, this is the place where you get your chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the really big venues will be okay, but they're for the really big acts who will also be okay. It's these smaller independent venues where all the artists, that's where music begins, and I'm really concerned. Like, I really think 100% there'll be lots that don't survive this, and I hope that some will. But I read today that, you know, the Globe Theatre where Shakespeare's plays used to be performed and everything, it's like a huge, like, it's an incredible historical landmark. But I read in the news today that they're in trouble, and I think if the Globe Theatre's struggling, imagine all the little theatres, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I saw that, I was like, okay, where's the GoFundMe page so I can?
It's really rough.
Like, you can't close the Globe. Like,
yeah, it's tough for sure.
We need all the cultural cornerstones we can get, and they keep going away and getting replaced by stuff that isn't that.
I know, it's a shame, but I'm being a bit pessimistic at the moment, but I do hope that something will bounce back and it'll all be okay.
I think the most important thing is community, and like you said, like that's really, I think, the advantage of folk music is that because it's not super competitive because nobody's making any money. it is like, it's very supportive. We're just trying to get other people to listen to other people. I mean, that's why I have this show going on is like, I just want like to be able to introduce some new people to some new artists, and especially some things that are very different from us.
Yeah. And I mean, also, I think the folk, I don't know, certainly in the UK, the folk scene, the fan base in the folk scene is incredibly loyal and incredibly supportive, because these people love grassroots acts. They love seeing acts kind of starting at the bottom and rising. And I've been totally blown away by just how supportive people have been. I've had so many, like, on my live streams, like donations for one thing, but also just kind messages, and people like buying CDs who, like, for their friends because they just want to support me and stuff. And like, people are amazing. And I do think folk scene, especially because they understand that it's tough, and that we're not musicians who are making loads of money, so I think they understand that this is tough, and they want to show their support. So that's been a huge morale boost rather.
Yeah, it's just always a shame, because I also think that one of the advantages of folk music is that, like, those are the kind of acts where after they're done, you go have a pint with them at the pub or at the venue, if you're, if the show's still going. And like, we can't do that. I can't go and have a Guinness with my fans, who are just my friends. Like, I mean,
yeah, but it's nice. I know, I miss live music. Live streams have been great, but nothing is going to quite replace live music, I don't think.
So you've been doing some live streams. I'm trying to remember, there was something about some sort of like kind of live stream festival that you did recently. Yes. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what was it like? Have you found that it's been helpful to you, like, in terms of getting your music out there?
Yeah, so that the festival one I did was called the CCC Festival, which stands for Kieran's Corona Collaborations, because this is a fantastic fiddler in the UK who's been doing daily collaborations with artists, like, which is an incredible amount of work to begin with, kind of online collaborations with other folk artists. And again, he started doing that in order to try and promote people, which is wonderful. But then he selected like 24 of us, I think it was 24 of us, to do a 2-day festival. So we all pre-recorded half-an-hour sets that he then played back to back like a festival, with live Q&As in between. And it was great. And again, not only was it useful for growing our individual fan bases, it felt like a community, because it was all these artists kind of pulling together and watching each other's videos and supporting each other, and it was nice. And yeah, the live streams have been fun. I'm getting more used to talking to no one and yet a few hundred people at the same time. It's a very odd sensation at the beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely been strange. Like, going from a classroom to doing classes on Zoom was like super weird.
I mean, normally I wouldn't sell 400 tickets to one of my headline shows, right? So that's a lot of people for me to then log on, and suddenly I was playing a song and I thought, oh, maybe I was hoping like maybe 20, 30 people, that would be amazing. And I looked at the corner of the screen and it said like 402 people or whatever. I was like, oh my God, what's going on?
Biggest crowd to date.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but yeah, great. I've really enjoyed doing them. But yeah.
Cool. So tell everybody where they can find your music, where they can find out more about you, and if you have any crowdfunding things going on, like whether it's just like your Venmo or PayPal or Patreon, something like that. Pitch everybody where they can send you their hard-earned quid.
My hard-earned cash. So I'm on social media across everything. It's just Katherine Priddy, which is Katherine with a K and Priddy. And then on my website, katherinepriddy.co.uk, if you go to the music tab, you can buy my little 4-track CD or the sexy blue vinyl, which has got 2 tracks on it, a nice sort of 7-inch vinyl. And that comes with a postcard as well, which suddenly seems kind of fitting during these times where we can no longer see each other and just have to write to each other instead. I do have a PayPal link. I don't know what Venmo is. I've never heard of Venmo, but I have a PayPal.
Venmo is it's sort of like PayPal. It's an app on your phone, and maybe they don't have it in the UK yet. It's just a way to send money, just like PayPal.
Oh, okay. I do have a PayPal thing, and again, it's just Katherine Priddy. it's that PayPal/Katherine Priddy thing.
And you can check out all of those. I will post those on the links below.
Wicked. Yeah, no, it's always lovely to get orders, and I'd always rather somebody ordered something from me rather than just donated. As much as that, obviously I love that as well, but because it's nice to be able to give something for your
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is that like we make music because we want people to listen to it, right? It's
yeah.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, like if you can make a living off it and have that be your whole thing, that's super nice.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, as folk musicians, we're a little realistic most of the time. We just want to get it out there.
We've all got our side hustles to pay the bill.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add that we haven't talked about?
I suppose just to encourage people that if you like music, there has never been a more important time to try and support it, and whether that is buying CDs, buying tickets for gigs that are well in advance, and then if they get postponed, keep the ticket rather than asking for a refund, stuff like that, which is going to help keep venues alive. Also, if you've got a favorite venue, contact them and ask them if there's anything you can do, whether it's like a membership or just buying something from them. So yeah, I just think it's all about being proactive now. If you love live music, it's about being proactive and finding ways to help support it, because even just a message on Instagram or Facebook has just been so, like, it's been such a morale boost at the moment.
Yeah, we definitely feel the isolation a lot. Like, I mean, it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago I could go and meet back up with my band and work on,
I mean, we still can't. I think I'm on week 10 now of isolation, and it's like even when I get a little message from people, it's just nice. So that's what I'd suggest. Yeah.
Great. Well, Katherine, thanks for joining us here on the show, and
having me.
We will definitely be in touch and linking some more of your stuff as we see new stuff coming out. It was great talking to you. I've been following your music since I found you guys on Instagram. I was just following some of the, like, checking out like tags and stuff that I was using for our band, because I am so crap at social media.
It's been a real learning curve for sure. I have to use it, and now I have to use it all the time. So
yeah. That's the thing, is like if I didn't have a band, like I might be on Facebook some, but probably not very much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it forces you to learn all that stuff and, you know, be one of the hip cool kids. Or at least
Totally. But yeah, no, I really did it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and we will see you soon. Make sure to check out Katherine Priddy's stuff. I forgot I'm not mirrored. There we go. I'm pointing over here. Make sure to check out her stuff on YouTube, Amazon, and then of course her website, where you can get the hard copies of her releases as well. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, and you look after yourself, won't you?
Will do.
Don't have to leave.